Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll start the meeting. Welcome to the Cheltenham Borough Council's Planning Committee meeting being held on Thursday, the 19th of June. My name is Councillor Garth Barnes and I'm the chairman of the committee. This meeting is being streamed live to Cheltenham Borough Council's YouTube channel, and the recording of the meeting will be held for 4 years. If there are any breaks in transmission to the YouTube stream, the meeting will be adjourned for a short period until any issues are resolved. If you are here to make representations to the meeting, you are consenting to the use of the sound and video recordings for broadcasting and training purposes. Please be aware that CCTV and audio recording is now in operation in the public gallery, and the recordings will be held by the council for 5 months. Please note there are no fire alarm tests expected, so if the alarm does sound, you should immediately make your way to the nearest exit. Right, item 1, apologies. We haven't received any apologies and we have a new house. And can I welcome, apologies.
Yes, I need to declare an apology for 6B, the garden house.
No, that's an interest, Councillor Wheeler. We're not come to the interest.
Sorry,
There
declaration.
are apologies at the moment.
Declarations of interest.
No apologies for absence to the meeting.
I beg your pardon. I'm looking at the agenda.
Can I welcome Ian Doby to the planning meeting for the first time, and I hope you enjoy your time with us. Thank you very much indeed, Ian. So now, declarations of interest, and Councillor Wheeler.
Yes, sorry about that. I was just reading what was there and not listening to you. Beg your pardon. Yes, I need to declare an interest in 6B, the garden house, in that I know the family very well, albeit I don't actually know the applicant so well, but I do know the family quite well. And I will leave the room and take no part in that item.
Thank you for that. Agenda item 3 then. Sorry, another apology, sorry. Declaration.
Yes, sorry, Chair. Again, 6B, I know the applicants, so I'll be withdrawing from that.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Any other declarations? No. Okay. Declaration of independent site visits then. Councillor.
Visited 6B and 6E.
Councillor Clark.
I visited 6A, 6B, 6C and 6D.
You? Right. So, agenda item 4, the minutes of the last meeting. I have had representation from Councillor Allen for some changes to those minutes. So I will read out what those are, and then you can decide whether or not you wish to vote to include them in the actual minutes. So Councillor Allen has suggested the following amendments to the members' debate. Bullet 4, could GPs please be changed to GP allocation? Also on bullet 4, please could the text in the third sentence be amended to say, facilities will be of huge benefit in addressing this. Again, on bullet 4, small change needed to the last sentence, so it instead reads, which will therefore be beneficial to existing, etc. And lastly, bullet 5, could the end of the first sentence be amended to read, Junction 10 improvement works and government funding? Is everybody clear what we're asking for the changes?
Chair, if I may through you, Chair. Just sort of members of the, just to remind members, the only part of the minutes can be discussed is their accuracy. And it would be a procedural motion from Councillor Allen to amend the minutes in line with, as the chair has stated, for their accuracy. So, for example, GP, to have the full name of it. It'll then be, so those specific amendments are then put to members, and it'll be a simple vote whether to approve those changes or not. And then, however that vote is carried is whether the minutes will be amended, and then the chair will sign them. Any questions on the procedure or the reasons? It's accuracy only, members.
Councillor Allen.
Sorry, just to say, I know that there have been 2 minutes included in the pack, so just to say that this is for the Elms Park minutes, underneath the members' questions on page 22, if you are in need of finding them.
Councillor Bamford.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was frantically looking through the wrong set of minutes to try and work out what that related to. So could you go through it again, because I didn't follow it that time. Thank you.
Page
Yes, we are talking, I think as Nigel said, about the accuracy, not what we feel it should say. I can't remember exactly what was said, and I have to rely on what officers have written down. So I feel that in that I can't actually remember exactly what was said, I would think that I would need to abstain.
Okay. Councillor Allen.
Apologies, just for clarification, and apology, I didn't realise this would be such a long procedural motion that was drawn out. I thought it was just a few minor amendments, but to say that this was corrected in line with the video that was published on the Councillor YouTube channel, which documents what we said at the Elms Park meeting.
Has anybody got any other points to make on that then? So Councillor Allen has put these points forward as a change to the minutes, and we will vote on them as the legal director has said. So all those in favour of adding these points to the printed minutes, please show, or please declare. Yeah. So that's carried. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9 votes for, 2 abstentions. Okay, so that's carried then.
And just to clarify, Chair, the minutes will now be signed on that basis.
Okay, so move on to item 5. This is also a bit of a change to normal processes. We do have a public question. However, as the individual is not present in the chamber, I am not going to read it out. We don't have a requirement to do so, but it will be recorded within the minutes of the next meeting, so you will see it, the question and the answer. Thank you. So agenda item 6 now, which is the first planning application, which is 6A Prestbury Road. I'm going to ask the Principal Planning Officer to introduce it for us, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a planning application for a single-storey dwelling to the rear of 151 Prestbury Road. The applicant currently owns 151 Prestbury Road, the terrace, and they propose to develop the back plan site to the rear. As you can see from the site plan, the proposed dwelling is square and centred towards the south of the site, with a driveway and 2 parking spaces. The application has been slightly reduced in size during the course of the application, and the applicant also undertook a pre-app with case officers following their refusal of a 2-storey scheme previously. The proposed floor plan shows 2 bedrooms, a study and a family kitchen area, and the 2 parking spaces and garden. The roof plan shows solar panels, and it is a flat roof, similar to other backland developments. They provided an example landscaping scheme. However, the exact details would be secured via condition. The design of the dwelling is fairly modern and similar to that of Mabel, which was permitted some years ago. Overall, the proposal can be considered policy compliant in terms of the key issues, being the principle of development, design and layout, neighbouring amenity, parking and highway safety, and sustainability. And these are addressed in full in the officer report. In this case, having particular regard as required by the NPPF to making effective use of land, whilst neighbours will see the proposed development and is slightly larger than other infill schemes in this area, officers are satisfied any adverse impacts resulting from the scheme are clearly outweighed by the benefits of providing an additional dwelling in a sustainable location and making effective use of land. Officers can find no sufficient grounds on which to refuse the proposal. Consequently, officer recommendation is to permit the application subject to the above conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. So we have 2 speakers, an objector and the applicant. And the first speaker is Lucy Smith, an objector. If you'd like to come forward to the microphone, you have 5 minutes to make your points, and I will remind you 30 seconds before the end of your 5 minutes to give you time to finish your notes. Let me just...
May I start?
You can start.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm here on behalf of the objectors to oppose this planning application. Point 1, inadequate time and unfair process. We only received the officer's recommendation report last Friday, leaving fewer than 5 working days to review it. While working full time and managing family commitments, that's simply not enough time to respond meaningfully. We were unaware of the formal recommendation would be made before this meeting. Meanwhile, the applicant has had months of pre-application discussions with officers, some of which appear to have continued throughout the consultation period rather than ceasing before submission of the application. We've had no comparable access, which feels far from being a level playing field. Point 2, biodiversity loss policy SD9. The officer's report confirms a 39.7% net loss of habitat units, well short of the 10% net gain required under policy SD9. There's no formal confirmed mitigation and no clear plan. Until a deliverable biodiversity game plan is secured, we'd ask that this application does not proceed. Point 3, overdevelopment and setting a dangerous precedent, policy D1 and garden land SPD. The office report calling this underutilised land is misleading. It was a private garden until the developer had the trees removed and building contractors dug the surface of the garden into a central mound, covering debris from the extension of the existing 151 Prestbury Road. If accepted, this sets a precedent that anyone with a garden large enough could class it as underutilised land and build on it, regardless of character, impact, or infrastructure. This undermines Cheltenham's garden land SPD and policy D1. The dwelling's footprint, closeness to neighbours, and overbearing presence were all acknowledged in the report, yet still recommended for approval. This directly contradicts the spirit of local policy and guidance. On point 4, residential amenity and inaccurate plans. There's no daylight sunlight assessment. Residents have raised concerns of overshadowing, privacy loss and glare from proposed solar panels, all in breach of policies D1 and SL1. The site plan inaccurately includes the house and front garden of 151 Presby Road, misleading members about the development scale and context. On highway safety policy INF1, this plan has limited turning room, and we feel breaches policy INF1, which mandates safe access and suitable parking. Recent comments from the highway safety consultant raises that there are conflicts with original plans submitted for 151 Presby Road and have not been addressed as far as we can see. Materials and character policies D1 and SD4, the modern design does not align with the Edwardian character of the area. Policy SD4 stresses the need for contextual respect. The proposal does not deliver that, the surrounding properties being of Edwardian character, and as you've stated in the report, the materials and design of the proposed dwelling being modern and incongruous with the surrounding properties. You've cited Maybell as a recent precedent. However, for example, Maybell does not have any windows that overlook neighbouring properties on 3 sides. On point 7, treatment of public comments, we've submitted extensive evidence supporting videos and photos across the 2 applications. We have no assurance that members or officers have been able to review all of those. We're also concerned by the applicant's private offers of new fencing, and in the case of 153, an offer of land exchange for use of their garage, suggesting mitigation of potential objection. The boundary between 149 and 151 did benefit from a new fence. However, in the process, the boundary was altered, which has been evidenced by photos, before and after photos provided to the planning officer. Concerns about HMO have been raised. Just last week, a drum and bass party at 151 Presby Road was heard widely. One attendee confirmed the house is now occupied, raising questions about its use. Concerns that this or the new proposed dwelling may become an unregulated HMO remain unaddressed.
30 seconds.
Apologies. In conclusion, the application, we believe, fails to meet key planning policies: D1 poor design, SL1 harm to residential amenity, INF unsafe access, and SD9 biodiversity net loss. From a personal perspective, this process has taken its toll from the way the application has been handled. Multiple retrospective design changes to a process that hasn't been made clear or transparent, and has damaged the peace and quality of life prior to the application being made. If this development goes ahead, several long-standing residents have expressed.
Can you bring
that they
it
want
to a close, please? Thank you. Thank you. If you could just turn the light off, thank you. So the next speaker is the applicant to address the committee. You have 5 minutes also, and I will give you the same courtesies as I gave the other speaker.
Evening, can you hear me?
I can indeed, and
perfect.
you can start whenever you like.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, evening all. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about the proposal for the single-storey dwelling on the Presby Road, which is in Cheltenham's principal urban area. It is a garden development, and there are other garden developments in the area, as you've seen on the plot, such as Maybell and the Coach House, plus a couple of others. I'll mainly be going through the planning reasons why the proposal should be supported, but if we get time, I also just want to touch on a couple of the objections. In terms of policy, as highlighted by the officer's report, the plan aligns with the Joint Core Strategy SD10 and the National Planning Policy Framework, promoting sustainable development in a well-connected location. In terms of design, since the first planning refusal, we have indeed worked closely with the planning team as recommended through the pre-planning application process to ensure the refusal reasons raised have been addressed. This has resulted in a reduction of height to the single-storey dwelling, moved further from the neighbouring boundaries, updated to red brick design in keeping with surrounding buildings, and we have reviewed against the BRE 209 standards for daylight, sunlight, overshadowing, confirm we've met those standards, and we've also reviewed against privacy standards to ensure we're meeting those. The site coverage is actually only 22% of the plot. This is in comparison with a lot of other planning approvals in the area down Presby Road, the Morrison site that's currently being built, the 30 builds behind the local garages, the hundreds of houses just down the road. All of those are around 40% of the plot. In terms of amenity, we have just over 200 square metres of private amenity space. Those builds that I've just mentioned, those have 70 to 80 square metres. Other garden developments on the Presby Road have 20 or 30 square metres. So we're well above those and hopefully showing that the site can easily accommodate a home and a garden. Neighbouring amenity, the building is centrally located on the plot to try further avoiding overbearing impact or loss of light. Fencing and landscaping will help ensure additional privacy. The building will improve the current street scene, which is currently an overgrown site and an old garage with an asbestos roof. In terms of landscaping, we did lawfully remove some trees back in 2013 to help with sunlight, daylight and overshadowing. I know certain people aren't happy about this, but we've also had lots of positive comments from people living on the Presby Road who now get sunlight and daylight in their gardens, and also some have said they get improved satellite services. The new planting would be a condition as well, so that should help soften the visual impact and maintain any privacy. In terms of ecology, we have made contributions to mitigate pressures on the Cotswold Beechwood Sack. The Council's ecologist has confirmed that we meet the 10% biodiversity net gain requirement. Sustainability, we're adding solar panels, air source heat pump. We've also got in the sustainability statement that we want to put an EV charging point in as well. Natural ventilation and solar gain by design. All of this complies with the JCS policy SD3 and Cheltenham Climate Change SPD. The site lies on a flood zone 1, so no flood or surface water risk, and I have seen there is a proposal that sustainable drainage, that we get a SUDS report produced as well. In terms of highways and parking, we have worked with the highways officer who admittedly, I think as the objector said, initially said that we couldn't get a car down there. We've produced tracking plans to actually show that we can get a vehicle on in forward gear, park 2 vehicles, and get the vehicles back onto the highway in a forward gear, and he's now accepted that. This all meets the policy INF1. Other things, supporting local jobs, we'll be using the local builders merchant, probably all know who that is, using skilled labour, local labour as well, and a single-storey dwelling aren't the norm around here, different style of housing, and would be supporting those who struggle with stairs. How long have I got, sorry? 1 minute. Let's try getting through this then. So in terms of objections, the HMO use, we have not applied for a HMO licence. We have not submitted a change of class for a HMO either. Crime concerns that were raised, this is a secure single-storey dwelling. I'm not sure why criminals would enter our plot to get to somebody else's. Boundary dispute, we have spoken or had a message from 149 where we erected a fence for them. We're working with them as well, which was an old fence, so we've replaced that fence, and they said they're happy for me to say that there is no disputes between us. In conclusion, we've worked closely with planning officers to ensure the proposal is policy compliant in terms of location, design, amenity, biodiversity, highways, drainage, and sustainability. As a result, we respectfully ask the committee to support the officer's recommendation to permit the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Within your time limit. Okay, it's open to members' questions of the officers now. Any questions? No. Councillor Simon.
Thank you. Just raising something one of the objector raised, which was about timing and information to those who were resident. Could you sort of tell us what the situation was with that? Thank you.
So the officer report was published as per all of the others today, which was last Friday morning, which is the 5 working days, which is common practice.
Any other questions? Councillor Bamford?
Yeah, can I just, well, 2 things really, because, I mean, presumably, however, although the officer report was produced as normal, the full period of consultation on the scheme, could you, I'm sure you could confirm that happened. That wasn't my question really, but I just thought maybe it would be worth saying that. My question really was about the highways situation, because I can't quite tally the paragraph in here from the highways team with the concept that they're happy with it. So if we could clarify whether or not they're happy with it. Thanks.
So the highways officer was originally consulted and they had issues with the tracking of the internal site. So the applicant provided tracking which demonstrated those vehicles could turn within the site and then exit safely. So they're happy with that element. However, at the moment, as you saw from the site visit, you could hypothetically park a car in front of 151 and then park another car in front of that garage we saw. So they were of the opinion that 151 lost a parking space, so 151 would just have one parking space. The highways officer wasn't satisfied with that, but officers felt that 151 having one parking space out the front, and it's quite a wide pavement that the applicant's recently redone, so you could still fit another small car and motorbike. Officers felt it wouldn't be reasonable to refuse it on the basis of 151 losing a parking space, given it's such a sustainable location and those individuals could walk and use public transport as well. But the dwelling proposed has 2 spaces, which the highways officer was satisfied. Does that make sense?
Councillor Andrews?
Yeah, forgive me if I've missed this in the report, but the driveway proposed, is that permeable material? Is it gravel or tarmac?
So with the landscaping condition, that is hard surfing as well. So we'll secure the exact details and materials that they want to do during hard surfacing. But I believe it is permeable, having seen their sort of example SUD strategy.
No other questions? We'll go into debate. Any member for debate? Councillor Wheeler.
Yes, generally, I can see why, how this might impact on some of the neighbours. And I'm thinking particularly 153. It strikes me that somewhere in the far distant past, those boundaries have been changed. But we are dealing with boundaries as they stand today. I know when we went into 153, I did think that was a very small garden, but that's the garden that is today. It's a single-storey building that's going in, so we shouldn't be having any problem with views from that property. The only thing that did give me a little cause for concern, we were told there was a couple of silver birch in the bottom, what would it be, this southwest corner that we've asked to remain. I would like to see them have TPOs on them rather than rely just on a condition which will just give them 5 years rather than, because that will be of some help. And I can see that, I think that garden's 4 metres wide. That's not very big. And I can see that the residents in that new property might feel that removing those trees might be advantageous for them, but the neighbours in Cromwell Road might not be quite so happy. So I would like to see a TPO on them.
Thank you. Any other member in debate? Councillor Bamford?
Thank you. Well, just to say that it feels to me this has gone through a lengthy process of discussion and amendment, which I feel has got us to a very reasonable situation now. Biodiversity, next again, I know will be addressed should we approve this. And I do wish them luck achieving that, because it has become a wonderful meadow. Not that that's really the baseline, but it has become an extraordinary habitat in its own right, in its wildness. But yes, just to say, I think it has come at the end of a very sensible and productive process of discussion with the applicant. Thanks.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands going up. Do you want to come back on the TPOing of the 2 trees?
We couldn't, as part of this decision, ensure those are TPO'd. You have to sort of make the decision on the basis that the condition secures them for 5 years. On the basis that if they're generally nice established trees, it's probably unlikely someone would remove them. That's not to say in the future the tree department may choose to TRO them, but we can't today give you that assurance.
Sorry.
The trees officer was telling us earlier that we can only give this 5-year agreement on new trees, and therefore there would be no agreement, according to what he said just before this meeting, on those 2 trees. So other than a gentleman's agreement, as it were, those 2 trees have got no protection at all. So why can't we put a TPO on?
The wording of the conditions, so they're shown as retained on the landscaping plans, and that will be replicated in the landscaping plans to discharge the condition. And paragraph 3 of that condition 6 says any trees or plants indicated on the approved scheme, which within a period of 5 years from the date of planting, then it goes on to say you replace them if they die. So that would include those particular ones in this case because of the wording of the condition.
Councillor Clark, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I feel this is overdevelopment. I can see why it's been referred to committee. I'm worried about the trees. I feel it's been squeezed to maximise the space available, but I visited by myself, as you know, and I can't think of a reason that I could offer for refusal, sadly, but I can see why it's been referred.
Thank you for that. No other hands going up, so I presume there are no other contributions to the debate. So we'll go to the voting. The recommendation is to permit. Can you vote for, against, or abstain? So that's 8 for, 1 against, and 2 abstentions. So that's carried and it was permitted. Thank you very much indeed. So we now move on to 6B. I'll give the officer a chance to get into place before we start it. This is the Garden House, West Drive, and 2 members have left the debating chamber.
Thank you, Chair. So this application seeks planning permission for the formation of an additional plot and the construction of a new dwelling in the rear garden of the Garden House on West Drive. The application is at Planning Committee at the request of Councillor Took due to the level of local interest. The Garden House is a detached 2-storey property located in a prominent plot on the corner of Central Cross Drive and West Drive, close to Wellington Square. It's located in an existing residential area within Cheltenham's principal urban area. It's also within the Cheltenham Central Conservation Area and Pittville Character Area, with a number of listed and locally indexed buildings in close proximity to the site. Here we've just got some site images. So those 2 there are views from West Drive, looking towards the application site. Again, from a similar position, but just showing the the neighbouring properties. So the closest property is Rosehill House, and East Home, or the old rectory, I think as well, is further across. As we've got view of the site, so that's taken from within the application site, looking down the garden to where the proposed dwelling would be. The photo on the left there is from Wellington Lane, and the photo on the right is the rear elevation of the neighbouring property at Rosehill House. So a number of revised plans and additional information have been provided in response to the comments and concerns of officers, consultees and those of local residents. As revised, the application proposes a two-storey pitch roof dwelling fronting West Drive with a detached single-storey flat roof garage. Pedestrian access would be via a new entrance gate from West Drive, whilst vehicle access and off-road parking is via Wellington Lane to the rear. The position of the proposed new house and the garage is shown on these plans. Of the floor plans. So here we've got the proposed front and side elevations. The ones across the top are the elevations as originally submitted, with the ones on the bottom being the revised scheme that members are considering today. Got the same comparison plans here. So the ones across the top as originally submitted, and the bottom are as revised. Here we've got the garage elevations. And then we have an existing and proposed street scene, so the view from West Drive, so technically the front of the site. And then we've got a few CGIs, so again, view from the front on this one. And this one, looking further down. This is the side elevation, so effectively from within the garden, but obviously elevated of Rosehill House. The other side elevation, so garden of the garden house. And then we have the access and parking here. So the key planning matters for consideration are principle of development, site layout and design, impact on heritage assets, impact on neighbouring amenity, parking, highway safety, drainage, sustainability, impact on trees, impact on the Beechwood Special Area Conservation, and BNG and ecology. So as originally submitted, officers raised a number of concerns with the development in terms of its scale, form and general design. These concerns were also raised in representations from local residents, Cheltenham Civic Society and Cheltenham's Architects Panel. Following various discussions with the applicant's agent, a revised proposal has been submitted. In summary, the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, presumption in favour of development. The benefit of the scheme would be an additional dwelling to Cheltenham's housing stock. It's considered acceptable by officers in terms of its form, site layout, scale, design. It's also acceptable in terms of neighbouring amenity, BNG, ecology, impact on trees, drainage, access and highway safety. No adverse impacts have been identified that would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the scheme, and no strong reason for refusal in terms of impact on heritage assets has been identified. So given the above, officer recommendation is to permit the application subject to conditions and the Section 106 agreement. I won't run through them all, but they are all in the report. That is the summary of the conditions attached. The recommendation is to permit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ben. So we have 3 public speakers, and the first I have is an objector, Malcolm Duthie. You have 5 minutes. You will have heard my previous instructions to others, that I will remind you 30 seconds before the end, and I keep to time. Just let me get my, whoops. You are ready to start whenever you are.
Chair and members of the committee, I speak on behalf of the residents of Wellington Square. I'm a resident myself in opposing this application. Thank you for the opportunity of allowing me to speak. Wellington Square, as you know, is recognised as one of the finest Regency squares, certainly in Cheltenham, if not nationally. It is a heritage asset to the town of historical importance. It lies within a conservation area, is truly unique and has been safeguarded for almost 200 years The residents are rightly subject to stringent planning restrictions themselves. We understand the shortage of housing stock and the pressures upon you. We accept that the plot of land in question is potentially suitable for development. From the outset, we made a proposal which would permit development of a contemporary house following the line of the most relevant property, which you've seen there, namely Rose Hill House. We believe that to be a reasonable compromise intended to minimise harmful impact, but this has been ignored. One or two points about background, if I may. There has been widespread opposition to this proposal. Firstly, very large number of residents. Then the independent planning consultant report, which you may have seen in the bundle, from David Jones, concluded that the proposed development and developments revised conflicted with policy and identified the compromise, namely resiting the proposed dwelling to the eastern boundary adjoining Wellington Lane. I'll come to the slides. The planning officers originally told the applicants to rethink because the proposal in this sensitive location was considered to be harmful to the character of the area, concluding that it was too big for the plot and the design approach was inappropriate. The Cheltenham Architects Panel advised it to be an overdevelopment of the plot and was harmful to the wider street scene. They have not been consulted again on the revised proposal. There have been further twists in the story, which we think you should know about. The applicants have sold, subject to contract, the garden house. The new owner's intentions are not known. The owner of Rose Hill House sold the property due to the stress caused by the applications and the potential harm to her property. The new owner, William Proctor, has sent to you his objections. They're in the pack. And the applicant's architect, who lives directly opposite this controversial proposal, has also put his house on the market at one point. The Civic Society opposes, and both our ward councillors. Mr. Clamp is kindly speaking on our behalf in due course. Could I identify two principal grounds of where the proposal conflicts with policy and our grounds of objection? There are a number, but this is the two core. The design, layout and siting. Could I ask you to look at the visuals? This is visual 1. Could I take you to 2, please? 3, please. This is an overlay to demonstrate that the siting of the dwelling house remains the same. It's not been lowered in height and is in the forward building line, as you can see there, abutting West Drive, effectively on Wellington Square. The revised design provides for a house which is marginally smaller, but there is now a far larger two-storey garage, a coach house effectively, increased from 28 square metres to 126 square metres, with a west-facing balcony at the upper floor. The overall increase in floor area is 30%. So, we now have two buildings capable of dwellings, contrary to the planning officer's advice in the early days of one single home being permissible. The massing has increased, and it is an overly prominent and discordant feature. Remember what the architect said, this could be an overdevelopment in limited space. The proposal will neither preserve nor enhance the conservation area and will impact on the sensitive nature of the location. This harmful impact to heritage assets is contrary to policy. We fundamentally disagree with the view taken by the planning officer that the proposed siting is fine because it follows the line of historic and established building line of the properties on Wellington Square. The historic line is in fact relating to the historic houses on Wellington Square. The reasoning therefore is flawed. That line was interrupted when it came to build Rose Hill House, which was set back from the historic line and for good reason. Rose Hill is contemporary and of a wholly different character to the houses that surround it. It sets a precedent as to how to successfully accommodate contemporary buildings into a conservation area. The second example of breach is the window-to-window separation, which remains well below 21 metres in breach of the standards required. It's not cured by frosting of windows or by screening by trees. Those trees will be cut down and will take 20 years to regrow. Generally, we say this is in breach of the framework. There is no benefit to the scheme.
Can I ask you to close your
And we would ask you respectfully to refuse this application and request the owner's applicants to resubmit plans for an appropriate property in line with Rose Hill. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now have Alistair Bryden, who is the applicant, to address the committee, and you have 5 minutes also, with a reminder at 4:30.
Thank you. I'm speaking in support of the planning application on behalf of my wife and her family. Peter and Christina Ormerod lived at the Garden House for over 45 years. They were respected and well loved by their community. They loved their home and their town. Over the years, they were regularly approached by developers looking to acquire a plot of their garden, as we have been. The family has always been keen to prevent developers putting a block of flats or inappropriate buildings in the garden. Peter and Christine were pillars of the community. They loved Cheltenham and were active members of many organisations, such as the Civic Society, Friends of Pittville, and many more. As regular churchgoers, they were instrumental in keeping and turning St Mary's Parish Church into a minster. Unfortunately, a few years ago, Christine was diagnosed with cancer, followed by dementia, and Peter had cared for her until he passed away from prostate cancer. Last year, Christine decided she no longer wanted to live in the house she shared with Peter, and while she was of sane mind, decided to go into a care home to avoid burdening her children. As you might imagine, care home fees are very expensive, especially for those suffering with dementia. And unfortunately, the Garden House valuation was less than anticipated, this property being Christine's major asset. Applying for planning permission is a way for Christine to maximise the value of the house to support any future care needs. However, the family's desire is to leave the Garden House with a significant garden and develop a new property respectful of the surroundings rather than maximising value. This application allows us to protect the Garden House as an important Pittville property. We're avoiding its demolition and replacement by overdeveloped flats, as has been proposed for this site by developers and planning consultants. Sadly, locally, this has happened all too often, as examples at Moorcote Villa, St Martin's Terrace, and so badly at Lawnswood Court, where firms with deep pockets and patience have been able to overcome local opposition. We are very keen that this doesn't happen to the Garden House. Our architect, a near neighbour of the house, worked with us to deliver this vision, whilst reflecting the planning desire for a contemporary rather than pastiche property. We have worked closely with the planning team from a pre-planning assessment in 2004 and developed multiple iterations in response to feedback to ensure that we have a house that is in keeping with its surroundings and neighbours' properties. And I'd like to say that the application is actually now for a single-storey flat-roofed garage, not a double-storey garage. Money and time have been spent working in conjunction with the planners to ensure a high-quality design that's in harmony with the surrounding buildings, which are of varied design. In its current format, the Garden House plot has a much bigger garden than all surrounding properties and can easily support substantial development. Our proposal is for one detached house with garage and good-sized garden. The main building is in line with the others in the street. It does not reduce available street parking by having only pedestrian access from West Drive and a rear garage with parking spaces. Of course, whilst subjective opinions will always vary on any design, we believe ours is well developed and sympathetic to the area. This plan increases the housing stock locally without negatively impacting the area, whilst allowing the Garden House to continue as a large family home with generous garden for future generations. In summary, this proposal has been continuously developed with the support of the planning team to meet requirements, reflecting local feedback without overdeveloping this important plot of land in Pittville. The proposal adds to the housing stock within Cheltenham and meets all the planning requirements. This development will support Christine's future needs whilst leaving a legacy of the house and area Peter and Christine both loved.
Thank you, Mr. Bryden. In your time. Can I ask Councillor Juan Garcia Camp to speak? And you also have 5 minutes.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Lovely. Thank you. So thanks for letting me speak today. I'm here to support the view of a large number of residents of Wellington Square and the adjoining streets, as well as to convey the opinion of both the Pittville councillors, so myself and Councillor Took, who is unable to make it today. So first of all, I'd like to emphasise that I believe, as well as many of the local residents and neighbours, that considering the existing plot of the garden house, which is large, as you've probably seen and heard, and the council's pro-development stance, that development of the site should absolutely be permitted. However, I and others, including Councillor Took, are opposed to this development as presently proposed. As many of the councillors in this room may recall, a few months ago, Councillor Took proposed a motion in full council around the appropriate use of materials during street repairs, after a particularly egregious case of paving stones being replaced with tarmac in Clarence and Wellington Square in Pittville. This chamber was unanimous in its support of maintaining the character and feel of these beautiful and connected historic Regency squares, both part of the conservation area and both, more so Wellington, affected by a development of this kind. Our objection is based on this principle: the protection and retention of the Regency and unique architectural environment of this area of Pittville. I strongly feel that the development, based on the current proposed design, fails completely to do so. The design, which is unapologetically contemporary, is jarring in both scale and design language, and will produce a negative impact on the architectural cohesiveness of the area and the more appropriate later additions to it, such as the garden house itself or Rose Hill House. The proposed development will be nestled between two more modern builds, which I've just mentioned, which, while evidently much later than Regency, their design and, more importantly, their placement specifically is much more sympathetic to Wellington Square and West Drive, both being set back from the main road and shielded by vegetation, which was pointed out previously. In this case, it will take decades potentially to grow. Rose Hill House specifically is much more pertinent to this case, as I believe it sets a clear and sympathetic precedent on appropriate development within the conservation area, being more discreet and less obtrusive in scale and design compared to this proposed development, causing minimum impact, upon the street view, which the CGI images themselves I don't think quite convey the scale, as the street is kind of more narrow than it comes across, so it would appear much larger. So therefore, on behalf of a large number of the Pittville residents and both its councillors, I would encourage the committee to reject the current proposal based on the detrimental visual impact within the conservation area and the precedent this may set for future developments within it, as long as the existing precedents of more contemporary developments. I would, however, encourage a new proposal which provides a more sympathetic and heritage-conscious development and doesn't break so radically with the architectural environment of the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. Now open to questions to the officer. Any questions? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I just would like to ask the officer, did you consider turning the house so that it would be, because I went by myself to look at the site today, and it is true that Rose Hill is hardly visible from the road. Did you talk about that with the applicant?
Yes, many conversations with the applicant's agent following the submission of the first scheme that we saw as part of this application. Different suggestions were made, repositioning it at the back of the plot in line with Rose Hill. It wasn't that we specifically required it, but suggested that could be looked at. Ultimately, they felt that scheme wouldn't work. I think they felt there would be difficulties in terms of achieving any off-road parking, the access in Wellington Square, and it didn't achieve what the applicants ultimately were looking to achieve on the site. So that's the scheme that has now come in, has gone through a process of considering other options, but the scheme that's now in is what they want us to consider.
Thank you. And can you confirm that the garage is single storey?
Yes, so it was originally submitted as 2-storey, even as part of the revised scheme. So at first submission, there was some first floor accommodation and extra rooms such as like a study or an office and things like that. But that was another revision that we went through, which was to reduce the overall scale of that building. So it is now simply a single-storey flat roof garage building. Yes, I can bring the plans up again if you need it, but.
Thank you. Obviously, it's for the record because we've had this scenario before. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Steinhardt?
Yes, could you just confirm that the revised scheme did not go to the architects panel, and if not, why not? And is there a system whereby it only goes once, or could you possibly explain? Thanks.
So we don't consult the architects panel or the civic society as a statutory process. They select what they want to comment on from the weekly list. So we don't specifically invite comments on every application. So they would have seen it as originally submitted, hence we got their comments. But then, no, we didn't go through a reconsultation with them.
Any other member? Questions? Councillor Allen?
Thank you, Chair. According to NPPF 135, subclause B, it says planning policies and decisions should ensure that developments are visually attractive as a result of good architecture, layout, and appropriate and effective landscaping. Could I please have a definition of what visually attractive conveys? Because it's a very subjective term. Perhaps that's by design, but I'd just be interested to hear how that fits in with local policy as it exists.
I don't think there's an answer to that. As you said, it's a subjective matter. What one person thinks is attractive is different to others. From an officer's point of view, we consider the scheme to be overall acceptable in design, in line with the policy. But yeah, it is a subjective matter. I don't think there's much more we can add on that point.
Thank you. Is that all the questions? We'll go to debate then. Anyone on debate? Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the officer for preparing the report and to the speakers for their representations. I think there are many good reasons to support the scheme. I think on planning view, there was a consensus that there was enough space for it, enough space for development. There were some concerns around screening, but I think my biggest concern around the development at the moment is the design. I don't think it does fit with the character of the area. I think if I were to use planning law to justify my objection, it would be NPPF 135, subclauses B, C, and D. I don't think it fits into a strong place of a sense of place. I don't think the design is attractive or fitting. I think it's garish. I don't think it fits with the scene of the square nor the area. We were privileged enough on planning view to go around to the surrounding street and to the drive next to it. And it was clear that on inspection, the houses were of a certain design and nature, which is, I'd argue it's pre-20th century. I think to have such a modern design building would be unfitting. Thank you.
Does that mean that you are going to oppose it on those grounds?
Yes, Chair.
So we will go through the normal process of voting, and then I will put that policy forward, that proposal forward. Any other member? Councillor Bamford?
Yeah, I've tried very hard over my 3 years on this committee not to let my own personal view of what I find visually attractive be too influential, because really I don't think that's appropriate. I welcome that the NPPF paragraph that you quoted over there, because it does help me with my current situation. I'm afraid I can't vote in favour of this purely because of my own concern about the visual attractiveness of this. I accept that is subjective, but I think there comes a point when you have to take that into consideration. And I'm almost apologising to the officers, because I do think they've done a good job in the way they prepared this report. But in this one unusual instance, I'm afraid I can't support
Thank you. Councillor Clark?
Yes, I've listened very carefully, and the applicant, I'm facing similar expenses myself with my family, but I do feel when we look at an application like this, where it's for profit, to maximise profit, and I feel, having worked a little bit with architects, that it could have been overcome by taking those garages into the basement in a modern way and setting the house back as Rosehill House is set back. And then the design, whether I like it or not, wouldn't have been such an issue because you can't see it from West Drive if it's set back. And I regret that once again we're looking at maximising profit over loving our town and what we build in it. So I just wanted to say for the record as well, we've seen this before. If that garage turns into an Airbnb because somebody forgets that it's 1 floor instead of 2, I won't be very happy, which is why I wanted it on record.
Thank you for that. Councillor Foster?
I just wanted to say that this whole thing about the appearance and about it not fitting, I think we've got to be very, very careful here because it really is subjective. And personally, I think it would look far worse if they had designed something that was trying to be like the others and just wasn't. I think that would be far more jarring on the landscape than a modern contrasting frontage. You know, I think beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Some people think it's interesting when you get contrasts. And although it's a conservation area, it's not a Regency theme park. And I just think we have to bear that in mind, that we are in the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I love Cheltenham, and I particularly love the character of the Regency squares. And I find it difficult to actually sort out which way I would like to go. But I do think the design, and I agree with my colleague Frank Allen, I do think the design is not appropriate for that particular area, and I'd much rather see a more sympathetic design fitting in with the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Andrews?
Yes, it's not the only modern house in this area, and I do find that the arguments on this subjective point of appearance are quite weak, I think. They may not stand up to challenge or appeal, as it were. I do worry that we're going to be losing too much vegetation over this. Those trees, if we are losing any, will take an eon to regrow. Although in the neighbourhood, they're not exactly short of the trees. To be honest, it's a beautiful area, and of course you've got Pittville Park right behind it. I don't particularly like it. I can't see that there's strong enough reasons to object to it.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? The officers want to come back on any of those points?
Yes, so just to touch on, so the officer's advice consistently from pre-application discussion has been that a pastiche form of development would be inappropriate. So to try and replicate something that is clearly it's never going to be, that was the advice from officers from the beginning. So I just wanted to make clear that the applicants have followed advice from us. Ultimately at pre-app, we didn't really have a detailed design or form. We just had a general kind of scale and layout. So just to put that out there from officers' point of view. I think from addressing the concerns over design, I think all we need to remember is the way the MPPF requires us to make a decision. So you'd have to determine that the scheme was so unacceptable in design terms that it would warrant refusal. So is it so harmful that it would outweigh the benefits of the scheme is one part of the test. And then you also need to think about heritage impacts and whether there's a strong reason. So that you may have to define, or I wouldn't suggest you couple them together. So just need to, if we do go down that route, we may need to have a discussion on specifically where that is.
Councillor Howell?
Thank you, Chair. And many thanks, firstly, for my colleagues' clarifications and support, and for the officer's clarifications there. I think it's important to consider that in line with MPPF paragraph 11, that there is a presumption in favour of sustainable development, and that to employ an argument such as this would probably require a significant strong opposition in line with paragraph, I think it's 11D part 2, where it implies that there would have to be significant reason to object. So I withdraw notice of motion on that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I don't see any other hands coming up, so I think we will go to the vote. It is a permit subject to Section 106 agreement, and the voting has come up, so if you would like to indicate. So there's one missing, I think. Is there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Should be 9 of us. Oh, right, that is 9. So the voting is 5 for, 2 against, and 2 abstentions. So that is carried, and the application is approved subject to 106 agreement. Thank you very much indeed. Would somebody call in the councillors who are waiting outside? So we're just getting ready to deal with item 6C, Castle Dream Stud. I'm waiting for the, we seem to have the technology working, so I'll ask Michelle to introduce it for us, please.
Thank you, Chair. So planning permission was granted last September on a permanent basis for the residential occupation of the Castle Dream Stud site by Gypsies and Travellers, and the permission was subject to conditions. Permanent permission was granted following the earlier grant of 3 temporary permissions, the earliest of which was allowed on appeal in 2011. So this application is made under Section 73 of the Town and Country Planning Act and is seeking to vary conditions 1 and 3 of the recent planning permission to allow for additional occupancy, namely 2 pitches comprising of a total of 4 mobile homes and 2 touring caravans, together with the storage of 2 additional touring caravans. So the application is before the Planning Committee due to an objection from Charlton Kings Parish Council and at the request of Councillor Day for the reasons set out in the report, and the officer recommendation is to permit. So the site is located to the north of Mill Lane at the junction with Harp Hill and lies within the Cotswolds National Landscape outside of the principal urban area. Although the wider site covers some 2.4 hectares, the buildings and caravans are grouped together in the southeastern corner of the site. And then this image just seeks to show the site within the wider context. So the plan on the left shows the layout as approved in September, with the proposed layout on the right, and there is no additional hard standing proposed. So the extent of sort of built form on the site wouldn't be increased. And then we've just got some photos. So the images to the top and to the right are of the rear pitch, where a new mobile home is proposed alongside the existing. And then the bottom 2 photos are of the front pitch, where an additional mobile home has already been installed, and then the existing mobile home reorientated. So whilst the development as approved results in some limited permanent harm to the Cotswold National Landscape, and the site is not particularly well served in terms of access, the site now does benefit from a permanent grant of planning permission and provides for 2 pitches which contribute towards the accommodation needs identified within the Gypsy and Traveller Accommodation Assessment. Officers are satisfied that any additional landscape harm arising from the installation of additional mobile homes and touring caravans on the site for occupation by members of the applicant's family is limited and is outweighed by the ongoing unmet need for Gypsy and Traveller accommodation within the borough. And members are reminded that there is no other alternative provision currently. As such, on balance, the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the amended schedule of conditions set out in the officer report. And so the conditions reflect those imposed on the earlier permission, albeit updated, and relate to the approved plans, the occupation of the site by Gypsies and Travellers, the permitted number of mobile homes and touring caravans, and any new external lighting, if proposed.
Thank you, Michelle. We have no public speakers, so do we have any questions of the officer? Councillor Wheeler?
Unless I got it wrong, I think there was comments on the site visit about sewage, and I believe it's septic tank rather than mains. Is the septic tanks, etc., are they a planning or is that building regulations? Is it under us? And if it is under us, is the septic tank big enough to handle the number of properties?
So the septic tank, or concerns over the septic tank, is something that will be handled by our private sector housing team. It's not something that we can sort of control through the planning permission. Previously, concerns were raised and a case was opened and then subsequently closed in 2024 following works to sort of mitigate the concerns. And the private sector housing team have confirmed that there have been no further objections to date. And as far as they're concerned, that the matter is closed. And I've been on the site a number of times, and as we saw on site on Tuesday, there wasn't any evidence at the moment of any issues.
Any other questions of the officer? If not, we'll go into debate. Any debate? No. In that case, we don't need to go back to the officer, so we'll take the vote, which is permit subject to the conditions as you've heard. Please vote accordingly. So I think that's everybody. We are missing Councillor Oliver, who's had to leave for personal reasons. So that's 10 for, none against, and no abstentions. So that's carried and permitted. Thank you. So the next item we have is, let me just get my notes, which I've lost, is Bourneside Road, 6D. And I'll ask Victoria Harris to introduce it for us, please.
Thank you, Chair. So we've got 18 Bourneside Road. The applicant is seeking planning permission for a 2-storey side and rear extension, single-storey rear extension, extension and conversion of the existing side garage, and extension of the existing roof. The dwelling will be modernised with new windows and doors, and the existing brickwork will be clad in white cream render and neutral cream composite weatherboard. A new dropped curb is proposed to allow double access driveway with an extended gravel driveway. The application follows a pre-application and the submission has been revised since the initial submission. The application site is located on Bourneside Road within Park Ward and comprises a detached 2-storey dwelling within a good-sized plot. The dwelling is not listed and the site is not located within the conservation area. So the slide is a photo of the front of the property and a photo of the rear. And we have an aerial view of the site. Then the proposed block plan showing the locations of the extensions. Then we have the existing and proposed front elevation. The proposed front elevation shows a 2-storey side extension. The eaves height will be increased by 300 millimetres of the existing property. The ridge height will be increased by 1.9 metres. New UPVC white sash windows are proposed, and the dwelling will be clad in render and composite weatherboard cladding in a neutral tone. Then we have the existing and proposed rear elevation. A full-width 2-storey and single-storey rear extension is proposed. The 2-storey extension extends the full width of the dwelling and 1.4 metres beyond the existing 2-storey rear projecting wing. The single-storey extension extends 2.6 metres beyond the single-storey extension. This is the existing and proposed side west elevation. This is the elevation to the side of number 20 Bourneside Road. Then we have the existing side east elevation and proposed side east elevation. This is the elevation to the side of number 16 Bourneside Road. Then we have the existing floor plans, proposed floor plans, And then we have existing and proposed street scene elevations. The top is existing and the bottom is proposed. Then we have proposed material examples. The full details will be secured by suggested condition. And we have examples of large windows and doors at first and second floor along Bourneside Road and Haverley Road. The officer's report details the key planning matters, which are design, impact on neighbouring amenity and sustainability. For the reasons set out in the officer's report, the proposed development is considered to be acceptable and would be in accordance with the relevant policies and guidance. As such, the recommendation is to permit this application, subject to the above recommended conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. So we have two speakers. The first is Mr. Ken Whipday, objecting to the application. You have 5 minutes. Please come forward. I will remind you at 4 minutes 30 that you're coming to the end.
It's better, isn't it? Okay. Good evening. I'm talking on behalf of residents in Bourneside Road who are objecting to this application on grounds of overdevelopment, loss of amenity and loss of privacy. Next slide, please. The Planning Office report shows 12 objections and 6 supporters. The map shows the residents on Bourneside Road voted, and each objector typically wrote about 1,000 words outlining their opposition to the application, which shows how seriously they regard the matter. Next slide. This is the comment summary from the Planning Officer's report. The left-hand column shows a summary of all the comments made by both supporters and objectors. The right-hand column filters the comments to just residents on the road. The comment summary is now overwhelmingly negative. Next slide. To grasp why this is such an issue for local residents, we need to review the context. You've probably seen Bourneside Road on your recent visit. It's mainly detached houses, large gardens and large spaces between the houses. You can walk down the road and see the trees, hills and Haverley Park behind the houses, and exactly as the SPD states in its description of good design in Cheltenham suburbs. This streetscape is being eroded through incremental planning decisions that permit overdevelopment of individual plots. We're looking to the Planning Office to protect the streetscape as defined in that SPD. And next slide, please. You will have seen this house from the right-hand side on the bus on the visit. It's the most overdeveloped plot on the road. Planning permission was granted in 2022, retrospectively. This house looks nothing like any other house on the road. The Planning Officer chose this house as a comparator for number 18's application. Next slide. So why is this overdevelopment? The top plan shows there are only 1 metre gaps between the building's edge and boundary, just enough space for scaffolding. This means the house is as wide as physically possible. The roof reaches the maximum height. The building's mass from the front literally cannot be any larger. The floor space is increasing by almost 300%, and the Planning Officer considers this a modest increase in footprint, and compared to number 15 it might be, but compared to typical houses on this stretch of road, it's overdevelopment. Next slide. We've looked at relatively subjective views. Now let's be objective and compare the applications to the SPCD design principles. I won't read them out, but this one's from Maintain Character. Looking at the current house photo and comparing it to the proposed one below, the building's lost its symmetry and the proposal doesn't match the character of either the original house or the streetscape. Next slide, please. Design principle 2 is subservience. The drawing shows a much larger roof and side extension taking up half of the visual bulk of the house from the front. Instead of supporting the original house, the extension and roof dominate it. The extension is not subservient to the original design. Next slide. And design principle 3 is maintain space between buildings. The top photo shows a view to the weeping willow and listed horse chestnut trees behind the houses. If this was a single-storey garage extension like others on the road, the view to the trees would be maintained. The planning officer's report says there will still be a 2-metre gap and therefore no terracing effect. But the bottom left picture shows a 2-metre gap and the bottom right shows how the view is lost with such a small gap. The application is not maintaining space between buildings. Next slide, please. This is the loft conversion, and we'd follow the design guidelines on extending to roof spaces. The flat roof elevation with Juliet balcony gives the appearance of a third floor. The SPD explicitly states that loft conversions should not appear as an extra storey on top of the house. The SPD also recommends sloping roofs with flush or recessed dormer windows in loft conversions, and explicitly states this is to prevent overlooking of neighbouring properties. The planning officer hasn't considered the loft conversion in their report. The application does not meet the privacy requirement for loft conversions. Next slide. This is from the SPD design guidelines for rear extensions. Now, neighbours can look through their bedroom windows into our garden, but they only go to windows to open curtains or check on the weather. By contrast, the Juliet balcony is for lingering, watching sunsets, having drinks. It's on the 3rd floor, much higher than existing bedrooms and further back too. The photos show the current view of number 18's roof from neighbouring gardens. Imagine how this will look when their roof is taller, closer, and at a Juliet balcony. This reduces neighbours' privacy, which isn't being maintained, and the planning officer is sacrificing neighbours' rights to privacy to allow the developer to build a Juliet balcony in the roof, which we think is explicitly forbidden by the SPD. The next slide, please. Our planning consultant asked me to add this, said it's misleading, should not be used because it's not to scale and it's got a disclaimer on it. Next slide, please. In summary, the development should be refused because it does not comply with the SPD design principles. Can I add, we understand the need to extend the property to live in, and I'm more than happy to engage with planning officers and developers about a compromise. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Thank you very much. Just in time.
Phew.
Can I now ask Sean Pack, who's the applicant, to address the committee? You have 5 minutes also.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. My name is Sean, and I am here with my wife Liz tonight. We are not commercial developers. We have bought this property with the sole aim to create our forever home. Unfortunately, the property is in a state of disrepair. The roof is end of life, and the structure requires complete renovation. Our proposed plans seek to restore and extend the property from a relatively modest 4 to 5 bedroom home. We have shown our full commitment to the Council's planning process. Firstly, by completing a pre-planning application which raised no significant concerns regarding scale, form or design. However, following feedback from a small number of neighbours, we took the decision to make a further series of meaningful revisions. These changes go above and beyond the recommendations of our planning officer. Following the resubmission of our amended plans, we are pleased to see a considerable decrease in the number of objections, which reduced from 12 to 6. We were also really encouraged to have received 6 letters in support, including our next door neighbour at number 16 and number 19 opposite. Whilst I'm unable to address all of the false claims that have been raised by our neighbours during this 5-minute process, I would like to factually address the main concerns of overdevelopment, privacy and streetscape. To support these points, I've included a picture pack. So, number 18 sits on one of the largest plots on Bourneside Road. Even with the proposed extension, the overall plot coverage remains at under 25%, of which 6% is single storey. To reduce the perceived scale, we've redesigned the roof shape and removed the conservatory and front porch, which were on the initial application. Many other homes on Bourneside Road have already extended into their loft spaces, reflecting a precedent to support evolving family requirements. Regarding privacy, as part of our renovations, we have significantly reduced the size of the Juliet window. It has been designed to allow views across our own back garden and TPO trees. Due to the property location on the plot, it is set away from the border of number 20 and does not overlook their garden. Importantly, none of our rear neighbours have objected to the revised plans. In fact, one has actually retracted their initial objection. Notably, our next door neighbour at number 16 has submitted a letter of support. As shown on slide 6, 4 balconies and Juliet windows are already established elsewhere on the road, demonstrating a clear precedent for this feature. Finally, street scene. This shows that the street scene is already well established with significant variations in size, form, design and gapping. Cladding and render finishes are already established in this part of the road, with number 15 being a prime example on slide 10. And it also shows Hatherley Road of a similar type of property. I think what's interesting is number 12, which is only 3 doors down, received approval in December 24 for a sizable extension, including vertical cladding, and received no objections. Finally, our street scene drawing on slide 12 clearly shows that our proposed extension sits comfortably and proportionately amongst its neighbours. In conclusion, we have followed a thorough planning journey from the pre-application stage to our ongoing collaboration with our planning office of Victoria to deliver meaningful design revisions. This process demonstrates that we've listened carefully, acted in good faith, and submitted our plans in response to concerns. The officer's recommendation for approval gives us confidence that our application is both policy compliant and proportionate. Finally, I want to emphasise that we are currently renting whilst also paying a mortgage on this property. Any further delays, particularly an appeal, would have a significant financial burden on our family. We respectfully ask the committee to approve this well-considered and sensitively revised application. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Just made it. Members' questions, please. Any? Councillor Allen?
Thank you, Chair. Just as a point of clarity to ask what the relation and significance of the SPD is in terms of how it relates to local policy, the Joint Core Strategy, the NPPF, like where in the hierarchy is it? I was under the understanding that the SPD is of lower significance than, say, the local plan and the NPPF, but it would just be good to have some clarity on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we would agree with that. Thank you.
Councillor Clark?
Thank you. Could I ask the officer, the drawing of the streetscape, is it in pro? Because it seems to be on, the gaps between the houses seem to be not what I imagined when I went to see the house, because number 20 actually has very pretty red brick side elevation, and it looks rather optimistic. I'm just asking, is that how it is actually measured?
Thank you. I haven't drawn these drawings. I can't measure them either. It just say for illustration purposes only. We just have to work on the assumption that they are correct. We have no way to measure or to know if they are.
Permitted. The gap between the new extension and number 20 is as permitted.
That's what I believe. Yes, I've no reason not to believe that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Going to debate? Anyone for debate? Councillor?
Yeah, just coming on to the one point on the notion that this could possibly be overdevelopment. I'm quite familiar with Bourneside Road, as recently I spent a good hour and a half or so canvassing in recent election. And I have to say, it's quite an eclectic road. And the idea that this is overdevelopment, people living in tight terrace streets would find that a ridiculous notion. And there are many people in this town that do so. I cannot see any legitimate reason for this to be objected to in reality, especially given the conditions behind it, and I will be voting in favour of it.
Thank you for that. Councillor Foster.
Thank you. I keep forgetting. My thought was also about the gaps between the houses, and it did seem to me when we went on the site visit that all the other houses were very much nearer their boundaries than 18 was currently, and that 18 extending would almost kind of bring it into line with a lot of the other houses in the street. So I didn't think that that was really a problem in terms of appearance.
Thank you. Councillor.
Just a quick point to support my colleagues, Councillor Foster and Councillor Andrews. I am very much in favour of the scheme. I think it works well. I think it's compliant with all of our policy. I think it's been well assessed, and I think on planning view it's very evident that it fits within the streetscape. So I wish to add my support for the application there as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to take Councillor Bamford because his hand went up first.
I presume we're on to debate rather than questions any longer. Thank you. Problem?
Yes.
No, sorry, Rhiannon is was waving at me as if I. Anyway, sorry. No, my point is in the southwest of Cheltenham, in my particular ward, Up Atherley, we have resisted very strongly going to a third floor with a balcony such as the one proposed in this case. However, I completely accept that in this instance, in this road, it has become commonplace. So whilst this, if it were a few hundred metres further out towards the southwest, I would be arguing that it didn't represent an appropriate development in this particular context. I think it probably does. Thank you.
Councillor Andrews, you want to come back?
Yes, I was just going to further add that we as a council are rendering our properties at quite a rate for a very good reason, for insulation purposes. And it certainly wouldn't be out of character for this property to be rendered as opposed to brick. And the extensions will be in character with the building that we'd be looking at, the rendered building. It would be hypocritical of us to view that as a change in character of the building when we're doing it ourselves throughout the town at the moment, for very good reason.
Thank you. Councillor.
Yes, just very quickly. Whereas I'm not in favour of Juliet windows, I personally don't like them, but my personal view doesn't count here at all. But this Juliet window does not overlook other properties, i.e. you can't see in anybody else's window, I don't believe. It only overlooks the garden, and I think any property where you've got a 2-storey plus houses, you're inevitably going to be looking into other people's gardens. So I think to complain that a neighbour's property can see into your garden, unless, as I say, my son lives in New Zealand and they're all single story and you don't look into people's gardens because that's the way it is. But we don't have all single story. We have mostly multi-story properties in this country, and you're always going to be seeing into people's gardens. So I think the argument that that Juliet window is it was overlooking other people's property, I can sort of see it, but I'm afraid it doesn't, in my view, carry a lot of weight.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Yeah, I was just going to make the same point, and I was pleased to note that the objector had actually acknowledged the fact that they can see into other people's gardens as well. So the privacy issue, I think, is a non sequitur, really. Any other points before we go to the vote? No? In that case, do you need to come back on anything, Victor? No. We'll go into the electronic voting then. All those for and against. So we have a full complement of 10 for, none against, and no abstentions. So that is permitted. Thank you very much indeed. We have the appeals updates, which I hope you've all had a chance to read. There are no other items that I determine are urgent. So I'm closing the meeting, and the next meeting will be an extraordinary meeting on the 4th of July to discuss West Cheltenham Southern Parcel. And the next scheduled meeting will be on the 17th of July.